Down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I am your host with the most, who is sometimes wishing he was a ghost, Rick. No, I'm just kidding. I don't wish I was a ghost. That would mean that I was dead, and I am not interested in dying anytime soon. I just couldn't think of anything else spontaneously off the cuff that would rhyme with most. Yeah, anyway. All right, now you see why I don't do lyrical numbers like Mark K does. Speaking of which, I actually sent the Mark K Biden Blues over to my partner on TGRN and sent it over to him and said, hey, I'm submitting this for consideration and the play. Anyway, oh my gosh, you're right. Toast. Hey, toast. Thank you, 3 Chevy. Of course, I can always count on the many miscreant, malfeasant, deplorable followers of mine known as the Whiskey Warrior P1s to come up with some stuff. And anyway, whatever. All right. Okay. So a couple of things happened this week. In particular, a major chocolate company, which this is pretty sad, but a major chocolate company joined in with M&Ms and decided to shoot themselves in the foot. And I'm going to cover that. Plus, I'll cover a response by an organization which was, shall we say, impressive, to say the least. I've got that. I've got a couple of things that have been going on because you know that CPAC is happening. The Conservative Political Action Conference has been occurring or has occurred. And, several people did speeches. I've seen a bunch of stuff on Twitter about it. They like Kimberly Guilfoyle, I believe, did a speech, and some of the libtards over on the Twitterverse went ahead and were like complaining about or pointing out that she didn't have a lot of people in the audience, so on and so forth. And of course, every time they do that, the first thing I think of is, well, just take a look at your wonderful President Joe Biden. He can't even fill 9 seats in circles in a freaking field. But anyway, I digress as far as that goes. Plus, I also have a fantastic question for Whiskey, and I think you're going to be a little surprised at my response at this. I have a feeling, because I know that there's a lot of, we won't call it disinformation, but there's a lot of theories that are running around out there with regards to this question. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But before I get to that, I have to, of course, reach out and talk to you about my Whiskey Musings logo gear store. Now, you can go to the logo to store.whiskeymusings.online. It's right here in the bottom of the screen here, store.whiskeymusings.online. And pick up great things like this hat, this wonderful ball cap looking setup here. It has my phrase, sorry about the dust, but it has my phrase on it. When I drink, I think Whiskey Musings. And we also have a whole bunch of logoed gear stuff like this fantastic gator, which has the Whiskey Musings logo on it. There's t-shirts, there's sweatshirts that have this. There's all kinds of wonderful articles of clothing over there. Plus, there's water bottles. I've got some other things around. I knew that was going to bring something out. Thank you, Dave, for Dave over on Rumble. I'll address that in just a minute. But anyway, and then you can also get t-shirts with not only the logo, but you can also get it with the Whiskey Musings phrase. I'm trying to get this in the right spot here. But Whiskey Musings phrase on it, when I drink, I think Whiskey Musings. By the way, that font that I'm using, I specifically picked the font because of the font's name. The font's name that I use is called AR15. Yes, that is correct. AR15 is the font that I use for my logoed shirt, or for my motto shirts. I call them the motto shirts. And I'm happy. I'm hatching an idea to start a line of Whiskey Musings gear called the Freedom Line. I believe it or not, I was out with my wife and daughter today. We went to a store, in the local store here, that has every first Saturday of the month, they have 20% off sales. And so we took a little family day, went out to that store, had lunch, enjoyed the day, had conversations. That when I was at the store, I ran across a t-shirt that I saw, and it had a saying on it. I don't know if the saying itself is like trademarked or whatever, but it made me think about expanding my offerings, not just for the logo gear or the motto gear, but also putting in some more things dealing with America and freedom. And so look for that to happen here in the near future. And again, Daybreak 3 over on Rumble, she put out wrong hat. I know you guys want this hat, and I promise you it is coming. I promise you it is coming. I just have to get some things lined up, okay, about it, and then I will let you know. It's going to be give me a couple more months, okay? Just give me a couple more months, and I'll get something going together for you guys. All right? Okay. Now, I want to also toss out a welcome to one of my younger listeners, Z. Hello, Z. Welcome. Thank you for joining. I do appreciate it. Believe me or not, believe it or not, I love the younger folks that come online and come and take a look and at least listen to the messages, because, you guys are getting messages from other sources that, you can't sit in a vacuum. And unfortunately, that seems to be happening, especially with social media and et cetera, et cetera. And so, because you get into that vacuum, you tend to get, we'll just call it a form of brainwashing. And so I'm offering up an alternative to that particular angle. And I always believe that critical thinking means that you analyze every single angle on a subject and then make your decision on what you are going to support. And like I've told my kids on multiple occasions, I've told them, if you ever get into a situation where you want to debate someone on a topic, make absolutely certain that you have your ducks in a row and you have supporting information, facts and evidence in particular, in order to be able to support your position and be able to support your stance on a subject with that facts and evidence. Because if all you're doing is supporting it based off of an emotional response or ad hominems, just slogans and things like that, and you don't actually dig deep into the information and get the real information, you literally don't have much of a leg to stand on, and people would generally tend to lose respect for you in the long run, as the more you come at them with those kinds of scenarios. And so, yeah, you have to make sure, and I don't, like I told my kids, I don't really care what stance they take. I mean, I would like for them to be on my side or join up with me. But the reality of it is that you're not going to agree with me every single time. I'm not going to agree with you every single time. And so as long as you have facts and evidence in front of you and you can support your decision using them, or support your position, I should say, using them, you're going to be in a much better off situation, because facts and evidence are, in general, irrefutable. And so as long as you have the facts and evidence on your side and you're able to present them in a clear and concise manner without bringing in a whole bunch of extraneous and extemporaneous things with it to the argument, then you're going to be in a much better position to be able to actually debate someone on a particular topic. And this is part of the problem that we have with a lot of the left, honestly, because the left, in most cases, will drop down because they can't back up their positions with facts and evidence. They will generally fall to things like name calling, or they'll go to talking points without really fully understanding anything other than surface level information, which puts them in a bad position when it comes to debating any particular topic. I don't even care what the topic is. It doesn't even have to be a left versus right or whatever. It's a lot better if you can bring those facts and evidence to the table and be able to refute what somebody says with factual studies, peer-reviewed information, so on and so forth. That's part of what happened with the whole COVID-19 thing, is that people were just, they were buying into, as an example, they were buying into the whole idea that masks work. And the smarter folks, and I'm not going to say the ones that have gone off to college and gotten their PhDs or, their medical degrees. I'm saying the smarter folks were sitting there saying, okay, well, if that's true, then where is the empirical evidence that shows that these cloth masks, which you can push smoke through, which you can breathe through on a cold day, you can see your breath going through. And we all know that the virus size was much smaller than like a water molecule is, or something along those lines. And so there is a reason why people like to see facts and evidence in front of them. And so that's what I'm saying. I mean, you can be on either side because everybody is entitled to their opinion. But as long as you can, back that up with facts and evidence and proof, then you're in a much better position to go ahead and debate somebody and potentially win that debate in reality. All right. Enough about that. So let's go on. Oh, wait, before I go to that, I am drinking tonight from the Jameson Black Barrel bottle. I'm going back to my roots and my Irish roots. And of course, I'm drinking it in a glass with my whiskey stones. You can see the black stones in there, and drinking it straight. Good stuff. All right. So, Jody over on Facebook, old lady. Seriously, why would you call yourself an old lady? I'm an old guy. I mean, I keep telling my wife she's got to go out and get 2 26s in order to replace my old ass. Anyway. All right. And as you can tell, I am on the tail end. I am on the tail end of that cold thing that has been hanging around for a little while. So I am working on it. It's almost gone. And hopefully I'll be able to get through tonight without too many coughings. Hi, Jody on Facebook. Daybreak over on Rumble says hello. Okay. So let me go on to the next segment of the podcast, which of course is On This Day in American History. And of course, on This Day in American History segment, we read from the American Patriots Almanac. This is put out by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. It is a fantastic book filled with all sorts of little mini stories, daily mini stories, facts, and, things that you want to look up about our great country. And tonight we are dealing with Lincoln's second inaugural address. When Abraham Lincoln gave his second inaugural address at the U.S. Capitol on March 4th, 1865, the end of the Civil War was in sight. Sherman had cut through the South, and Grant was slowly tightening the Union vice around Lee's army at Petersburg. Yet Lincoln did not speak of triumph. Instead, he turned to the task of healing a broken nation. He reminded his listeners that the war would end the evil of slavery, and suggested that it was God's will that both the North and the South pay for that evil. He urged his countrymen to maintain their faith in God's wisdom as they began to bind up the nation's wounds. Lincoln's second inaugural address, like his Gettysburg address, is inscribed on an inner wall of the Lincoln Memorial. Fondly do we hope, fervently do we pray, that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet, if God wills that it continue until all the wealth piled by the bondsman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword, as was said 3,000 years ago, so still it must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphans, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. And that is today's On This Day in American History. Lincoln was an incredible man, and an incredible orator. And by orator, I mean someone who could actually speak well. And of course, we have another great orator in this particular modern times, which was the great communicator, or as he's been dubbed, the great communicator, Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan, of course, would probably be speaking quite a bit about this particular administration and talking about all of the things that this administration has been doing. Speaking of what this administration has been doing, one thing that they haven't been doing is they haven't been talking in particular with regards to things like Hunter Biden and COVID and the January 6th videos and things of that nature that have been coming around. So let me go ahead and just get this started off really, really quickly here. Tonight's first article comes from Breitbart, which, you can take it or leave it, but there's a report that apparently Hunter Biden is now, as if the guy can't be linked to anything else. I mean, God, I can't even believe that. Well, I guess I can, because it's really, really difficult for these people to, actually, and I'll be honest with you, it is hard for somebody who is potentially brainwashed in a certain direction to be able to let go of that brainwashing and actually see the truth. It's a lot easier for those of us who see the truth first to be prevented from being brainwashed. But the thing about this is Hunter Biden is now being linked to a Chinese military company that is now aiding Russia. Now, keep in mind, Russia and China, they have similar, shall we say, sociological backgrounds in terms of being a part of socialism and communism. And so, it's kind of one of those things where you sort of expect the two of them to work together. You really do. Even though they may be a little bit apart from one another in some aspects of their relationship, they're a lot closer to each other than they are, of course, and either one of them actually are towards the West. But apparently a Chinese military company that was linked to Hunter Biden's investment firm is now assisting the Russian military in the war in Ukraine, according to a report. The BHR Partners investment firm, where Hunter Biden was a board member and 10% stakeholder, worked with a company called AVIC Automotive, which is a subsidiary of the Chinese state-owned Aviation Industry Corporation of China, to purchase the Michigan-based Hennings Automotive in September of 2015, according to the Washington Examiner. And the Wall Street Journal reported on February 4th that AVIC's subsidiary, AVIC International Holding Corporation, in October shipped 1.2 million worth of parts for Russia's Su-035 jet fighters to sanctioned Russia defense giant Rostec subsidiary Kret. So, look, I don't know if you can see, if you understand where all of this stuff is, but these guys are all like interlinked, okay? They are all going on and linking themselves together in basically any kind of profit that they possibly can. I mean, this is no different than the military-industrial complex here in the United States. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we were to find that many of the same corporations that were here were also tied to the opposite side. In fact, there have been times in the past where there's been accusations of companies here in the U.S. that have been actually playing both sides that are making money off of both sides. Because let's be honest with you, what's the best way to hedge your bets? Play both sides. So, you know, this whole thing, I mean, we're going to keep hearing about more and more things that keep coming out about Hunter Biden, about his business dealings, about his interaction with all of these foreign corporations, et cetera, et cetera. And it's boiling down literally to one thing, which is that Hunter Biden, and by default, because of the connection between Hunter and Joe gaining money off of this these relationships, okay, that Joe Biden is in the White House and has been acting as a foreign agent without registering, by the way, but has been acting as a foreign agent for many, many years. We don't even know for sure how far back it goes. I mean, it can go all the way back to when he was a senator. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it went back all that way. But the thing about it is that when you start looking into some of these things, for an example, Hunter Biden's lawyer is trying to cover up for him because Chris Clark, Hunter Biden's lawyer, told the New York Times in November of 2021 that Biden no longer holds any interest, directly or indirectly, in either BHR or another company, Scantinellas, which is an LLC that was owned by Hunter Biden, that held his 10% ownership stake in BHR. However, Chinese records, business records, are suggesting that the Scantinellas, which again is owned by Hunter Biden, actually still holds a 10% interest in BHR Partners, according to a 2021 annual report by BHR that was as of June 2020. Scantinellas was listed as a shareholder with a 10% stake. Okay. Now, there's also another angle here too, that in 2017, Joe Biden wrote a college recommendation letter for a child of Hunter's Chinese business partner, Jonathan Lee, who is the CEO of BHR, and previously reported, as it was previously reported by Breitbart News, Biden and Lee first reportedly met in 2013 when Hunter Biden flew to China with his father aboard Air Force Two. So we're just, I mean, This is just digging deeper and deeper and deeper, folks. Why anybody can even assume that the Biden and the Biden crime family and the Biden Corporation, Biden Inc., I'm using that term loosely. That's a Dan Bongino term, by the way, just to describe the criminal family that is the Bidens. Why we are not looking at this family and understanding that this is probably the most corrupt person who has ever sat in the Oval Office. I don't know. I don't know. Just doesn't make any sense. Well, there's another article here that I have about Hunter Biden. And apparently, back when Joe was vice president, Hunter Biden was advising Joe's office on how to answer questions about his Ukrainian connection. Now, why is this important? Well, again, it leans toward the accusation or the allegation that Hunter Biden was an unregistered foreign agent and that Joe Biden was also by proxy an unregistered foreign agent as well. And the thing about this particular article is it not so much about the email. They go through a full email string back and forth about it and so on and so forth. And they talk a lot about about the situation. But according to the New York Post, the exchanges between Hunter and Kendra Barkoff, who was the vice president's press secretary from May 13th, 2014, formed the basis of a complaint sent to the Justice Department on Friday, alleging that Biden's scion, that's Hunter, now 53. Oh my God, he's like 1 or 2 years older than I am. Wow. Okay. Violated federal law by failing to register as a foreign agent. So here we are again with even more information now that is coming out about the fact that Hunter Biden was an unregistered foreign agent. And the thing is that you gotta start digging down deeper into the file. But the America First Legal Foundation noted that Hunter wrote to Barkoff in June to say, "I am really sorry, but I have to cancel a call today," which is the AFL suggests that he had an ongoing discussion about the matter, meaning the communication with him in the Oval or the vice president's office, that continued nearly for a month and a half with regards to his action as a board member in the Burisma Holdings. Now, Stephen Miller, who is part of the American First Legal Foundation, and it was founded by Stephen Miller, who happens to be a former senior Trump advisor. Miller says that the discussions between Barkoff and Biden showed that Hunter Biden is Burisma's agent and subject to the FARA registration because he was an officer of Burisma and represented Burisma's interests to the office of the vice president, in addition to advising on a public relations matter. So once again, anybody who is a liberal person who is looking at these, not even looking at these things, is just totally doing themselves a disservice. They should be watching this and realizing that we have a man in the Oval Office who is completely compromised. He's been getting money from foreign agencies and foreign entities for years and years and years. And it just, I just don't get it. I just don't understand where these people are coming off as a part of that, as far as that goes. All right. So, as you know, and let me go ahead. As you know, the House Republicans have been having a bunch of hearings on a bunch of different topics. One of them in particular being the politicization of the FBI. Now, we've seen from the Twitter files, from the Twitter file dumps, that the FBI was instrumental in going after individual accounts on the social media platform. Sorry. There's also many other things that are starting to come out even further within the Twitter files. I mean, again, the further they dig, the more they find. But one of the other things is that now there's some whistleblowers that have come to testify to the House panel, and they are testifying against the politicization of the FBI against the January 6th cases, targeted pro-lifers, and in some other things. In particular, what they are talking about as far as the thing about the pro-lifers, which we all know. I mean, Garland went on to the Hill the other day and was talking about how he did not focus on the attacks on pro-life centers, but he literally said that the reason why he did not go and attack and go after those is because of the fact that the pro-life attacks happened in the dark, and it was harder to identify people in the dark. It happened at night. Now, that was a completely idiotic statement from our Attorney General to even state that just because a crime was committed in the dark, that it's more likely that people are going to get away with it. I mean, yeah, he's just trying to cover his butt. He really is. It's pretty much, I mean, from my position, that's pretty much what he's talking about. But the FBI apparently has, according to whistleblowers who have testified up on the Hill, the FBI has politicized cases regarding January 6th defendants and pro-lifers while retaliating against internal whistleblowers. Some of these whistleblowers testified last month to the House Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government, according to portions of transcripts received by Just the News. Retired FBI Supervisory Intelligence Analyst George Hill, who retired last year from the Bureau's Boston field office, testified that the Washington field office, and that's Washington, D.C., not Washington State, pressured other field offices to investigate citizens for activities that were protected by the First Amendment. Hill's own Boston field office, he said, pushed back against pressure from the Washington, D.C. office to open cases on first 7 individuals who came up in a sweep of bank records served up by Bank of America, and then a larger group of 140 Americans guilty of nothing more than riding buses to D.C. to attend former President Trump's Stop the Steal rally on January 6th in 2021. Hill believes that the Washington office applied similar pressure to the Philadelphia field office, and on a nationwide phone call of all 56 FBI field offices, he testified, then chief of the Domestic Terrorism Operations Center, Section Chief, or Center Section Steve Jensen, I'm assuming that's the section chief, Steve Jensen, asked the Philadelphia field office about the status of a lead on 3 individuals that had been sent by the Washington field office. So yeah, I mean, again, this is starting to open up another can of worms, folks. And the fact of the matter is that the DOJ and the FBI have been politicized so much, all right, that they have been going after what they call domestic terrorists, which have been people who are simply parents standing up to overzealous school boards and pushing things like CRT and gender studies and all these other theories that have been running around, not to mention the sexualization of our children. I don't know if you've actually seen some of the books that have been on shelves I mean, I've seen they are literally disgusting. They are a virtual manual on how to perform sexual activities on one another. And this is being pushed to kids that are 8, 10, 12 years old. I mean, these are in elementary school. I can't even imagine who at this point would even think of that, which, by the way, on a little side note tangent, California apparently has passed a law that essentially allows for young teens, and I'm talking under the age of typical consent in most states across the country, but to allow them to consent to things like oral sex and anal sex with adults. They just passed it. I just saw a article that came out about it. I mean, you guys talked about, or I talked about a while back, I talked about the whole Wiener law, who basically made it to where, young lovers could do this. But now California is literally the cesspool of depravity. And this is where a lot of this is emanating, and it's being carried into places like DC and other locations. I'm sorry. Our society is breaking down. The standards of decency are dropping big time within this country. And this is just a sad time to be here. And we're getting hit on all sides. We're getting hit on all sides with this. But as far as like the FBI is concerned and everything, they're going after domestic people first. They're going after domestic Americans. And they're using things like social media as a de facto spying apparatus to go after standard Americans. This is horrible. And for that reason, and for that reason alone, I really do appreciate this next article. I know that a lot of people are not really that big on Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm not that big on Vivek Ramaswamy myself. I think he's a little young. He just passes over the threshold of being of age to run for president. However, I will tell you that this thing that he is vowing to do, I think is actually right and proper. Now, you'll recall I talked on this program. There was a question, I believe it was a question for Whiskey, that dealt with, was the FBI actually constitutional? And as you'll know, the FBI was put together by the executive branch. It has no basis in any type of congressional decree. Now, for those of you who are whiskey warriors and do understand the constitutionality and the way things work with the Constitution, okay, it's that the Congress puts forth the statutes and creates the legislation for the executive branch to execute. So anything that the executive branch that they are doing that is outside of any law or statute or anything that has been passed by Congress that doesn't specifically assist with the implementation of a congressional statute or law is and can be considered unconstitutional. There's sections of the bureaucracy that the executive branch has put in multiple occasions. The FBI, the Department of Education, is not a congressional statute, and so because of that, they need to be disbanded. Now, originally, in the case of the FBI was actually created in order to fight organized crime. And if that's all that they did today, I think people would be okay with it. But the executive branch has expanded their powers and their purpose and their mission to a lot more than just going after organized crime and doing policing. Okay. So in this particular case, I am on Vivek Ramaswamy's, I'm with him on this. I am really, really with him. So, you know, he is basically saying that he added another agency. Apparently he's already talked about some other agencies. But he said this, Vivek Ramaswamy added another agency to the list of federal entities he said he'd shut down if elected president in 2024, which was the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We are done with the J. Edgar Hoover legacy, he said at CPAC. And he said it has no reason to exist. He also, just to kind of converse a little bit about his thought processes, he also asked the question, do we want a national divorce, or do we want a national revival? He argued that genuine national unity cannot be achieved through wishy-washy appeals to centrism or modern moderation. And I agree with him on that. The right has to stop trying to appease the left. We need to literally, as a whole, stop going with the idea that if we appease them or if we negotiate with them, that we're going to come to a equitable solution that is going to satisfy both sides. The problem is that equitable solution we have found in multiple situations where it isn't equitable. They'll say, oh yeah, this is all we want. A perfect example is this whole thing about, you know, they started off with gay marriage. It's like, oh, we just want gay marriage. We just want to be treated the same way. Gay marriage. Okay, fine. We gave them civil unions. Well, then they're like, well, no, that's not enough. We actually need to go after the term marriage itself. So they went after marriage itself. And now we're, you know, and the ball keeps going. It's a slippery slope. Now, when it comes to things like this, I mean, honestly, we need to just push back completely. It's kind of like, you know, we just have to push against the bully in the room, which is literally the leftists in this country. Okay. We need to get rid of this idea that these people are going to be able to be negotiated with and will be satisfied getting a middle of the road answer. It's not going to happen. Okay. It literally is not going to happen. I am totally and utterly convinced about this. And it keeps getting proven to me every single day over and over and over again about how these people want nothing more than just 100% total control over everything. All right. So another thing popped this week, which I'll be honest with you, it's going to be interesting to watch. It's, you know, I got to tell you, the last couple of presidential terms have been quite amazing. And the reason that I say that is because if you look at especially the last couple of years and even into the Trump era, the number of legal cases that we've been going after. Hey, Bonnie, I know you were late. Here you go. This is just for you. This is what I'm drinking. There you go. You know, the number of cases that have gone up to the Supreme Court have been, in my terminology, you know, have been going up. And this case is going to be another interesting one to watch. We've been watching a whole bunch of them. Biden has been slapped down on multiple occasions because he keeps trying to legislate with executive orders, and it doesn't seem to be working out so well for him. But as far as this particular case, I saw this on Twitter when it broke, and I thought to myself, this is going to be interesting. If this individual can actually prove standing within the court case, this is going to be another one of those where the discovery phase is going to be incredibly interesting. And that's this one right here. Michael Flynn has sued the DOJ and the FBI for malicious prosecution, and he wants $50 million. Now, the funny thing about this is, let me just read a little bit of the article here. Retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, former National Security Advisor to President Donald Trump, has filed a lawsuit against the Department of Justice, FBI, and others, alleging that he was maliciously prosecuted. He is demanding at least $50 million in compensation. Defendant maliciously investigated and prosecuted General Flynn by initiating and continuing a series of baseless counterintelligence investigation and by filing a criminal information lacking probable cause, said the suit. Wow, I think I messed that up really, really bad. Anyway, the former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, under the Obama administration, was investigated by the FBI starting in August of 2016 for supposed ties to Russia. In 2017, he was charged with lying to the FBI during an interview earlier that year. The suit alleges that the FBI and later prosecutions from the Office of Special Counsel Robert Mueller investigated and prosecuted him for political reasons, considering him a threat. The suit says General Flynn, who already had a reputation as a hands-on disruptor at the DIA, who had publicly excoriated the politicization of the intelligence community, and who had made clear his desire to overhaul the national security structure and the interagency process, was a direct threat not only to the self-interest of entrenched intelligence bureaucracies and the federal officials involved, but to exposing their prior and ongoing efforts to derail and discredit President Trump, the suit said. Okay. Now, the case against Flynn, according to the article here, was riddled with contradictions and inconsistencies. The FBI agents had already decided to close his case by early January 2017, but higher-ups intervened to keep it open on the justification that Flynn may have violated an obscure and antiquated law called the Logan Act by discussing with a Russian ambassador the priorities of the incoming administration during the transition period. Now, if you recall, the person who actually started talking about the whole Logan Act was none other than Vice President Joe Biden. Now, the 1799 Logan Act, which prohibits certain kinds of unauthorized diplomacy. By the way, freaking John Kerry should be also up there. If Flynn is up there on the Logan Act, John Kerry should be up there on the Logan Act with his interference into the whole communication back and forth to Iran. By the way, if you're going to do one, you got to do the other. I mean, it should be one rule applicable to all. Okay. But that being said, it may in fact, okay, so the 1799 Logan Act, which prohibits certain kinds of unauthorized diplomacy, may in fact be unconstitutional, several lawyers had previously told the Epoch Times. It has never been successfully prosecuted, much less aimed at an incoming national security advisor. The Flynn investigation, codenamed Crossfire Razor, continued only because of the defendant's agents and agencies' malicious, partisan, and unethical intent to investigate their political opponents generally and to destroy General Flynn specifically. So yeah, this is gonna, again, as I said, sometimes with these types of lawsuits, it is more important to go through the discovery phase and see the information that's pulled out in the discovery phase, than it is to actually get a final result, on the case. But this one, I'm telling you, this one is going to be one to watch. You have got to pay attention to this, because this could have implications moving forward, about different things with regards to how the weaponization of the FBI, the DOJ, etc., continues with this. And so this is going to be interesting to watch. Okay. So we'll just keep that in mind. All right. Let me go ahead and jump. I've got a couple other articles here, but I want to go and jump to what seems to me was the, potentially some of the biggest news. I am a chocolate lover. Okay. In fact, you can ask my kids. They keep telling me things like, Tootsie Rolls are chocolate. They're not chocolate. I'm sorry. A Tootsie Roll is not chocolate. It may taste with a chocolate taste, but that is not chocolate. The only true chocolate is either a milk or a white or a dark chocolate. Okay. Chocolate bars. Now, I personally like Hersheys. I like Cadbury's, which actually, I love the Cadbury cream eggs. I look forward to them coming out every Easter. Okay. But sadly, they're made by Hersheys. And Hersheys decided to kick off the International Women's Day and month, okay, Women's Month, with a advertisement that focused on a man dressed up as a woman. Now, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this, okay, and I just, look, feminists, I'm going to tell you, feminists, and Amy, you said, who makes the Cadbury eggs? It's actually Hersheys, is my understanding. Hersheys makes Cadbury eggs, okay? But Hersheys decided to put this thing out there talking about she, and it's a play on the whole Hersheys thing. Now, I understand it's kind of a cool little, advertisement thing, but the whole idea here is that look, I know that there are people out there who listen to this program who are transgender. I know that. There's no reason why they cannot be that way. That is their choice. And on an individual basis, that is their choice. Okay. But the problem that we have right now in our society is plain and simple that in the process of trying to promote the transgender ideology, you are completely stepping on and over the top of the biological women that are doing literally great things. And a perfect example is the whole Leah Thomas thing. Leah Thomas is a biological male who was swimming as a female and literally crushing all of the women who had worked really, really hard. Okay. Really, really hard to get where they were. Now, you can have the argument, you can argue all about the scientific studies that say men are stronger, et cetera, all of these different things. But the fact of the matter is that by promoting all of this transgenderism, you are glossing over the wonderful things that women have done and still do to this day for society, for this country and everything else. And the reason why is because transgenderism has become the next big thing. Well, M&M's did what they did. Okay. They got rid of all the characters and so on and so forth, even though the characters wouldn't necessarily have to identify per se as male or female, whatever. But the fact of the matter is this, that with the promotion of all of this transgenderism and the focus on it, you are literally crushing women, especially in sports. You are literally crushing their time to shine in all of this. And that seems to be a problem that, that seems to be, not taking into account that these women are doing these absolute wonderful things. And you have to just not recognize the fact that these women are doing what they're doing, and doing all of these wonderful things. You have to cover that up. Okay. Now let's get on to this. So on Twitter, after Hersheys announces this on Twitter, a boycott Hersheys trend started, because the brand features the man who identifies as trans in the International Women's Day campaign. So a lot of people got really, really ticked off about this. Okay. And so what ended up happening is our wonderful friends over at the Daily Wire, in particular, Jeremy Boring, who I don't know if anybody ever watched, but Jeremy Boring went head to head with the I Hate Hersheys campaign. And Hersheys was a razor company that decided to drop the Daily Wires from their promotional and advertisement portfolio because of something that was going on. To be honest with you, I don't remember all of the details, but Jeremy Boring of the Daily Wire decided, okay, fine, I'm just going to create my own razor company. And he did. And it's successful for the most part, from what I can tell. But Jeremy Boring decided to kick off Jeremy's Chocolates. And Jeremy's Chocolates has only been alive as an article for about 24 hours. But apparently Jeremy's Chocolates has sold 200,000 chocolate bars in just over that 24 hours. Now, the funny thing about the Jeremy's Chocolates is he calls the two chocolate bars, he's got two chocolate bars, he calls them She, Her, which is, yeah, you want to talk about creative advertising, this is perfect. She, Her, which is nutless, and He, Him, which has nuts. I'm sorry, but just in the creativeness alone, I think really earns something. So if you are going to, if you want to get some chocolate, I don't know how good this is. This is a brand new chocolate bar out there, but I'm actually considering purchasing a little bit just because of this. But go to IHateHersheys.com, and you can submit your order for either She, Her, or He, Him bars, or you can even get a combo pack and get both. But I just got to throw this out here. This is just awesome. So this might be an alternative to the whole Hersheys thing, but I got to be honest with you. I mean, Hersheys, just like everybody else, when they've gone woke, and they've decided to put their, look, they want to put their money in places like that. Okay, that's fine. But the fact of the matter is this, that you are essentially kicking the sand in the face of your biggest revenue source, which is the American people. And so, yeah. So anyway, yeah, check it out at I hate Hersheys, IHateHersheys.com. And you can check that out, for what they're doing. The advertisement, by the way, which I've actually seen on a bunch of different places. The advertisement that they came up with is I think fairly clever as well. But anyway, so I look again, going through and celebrating something like that. I could, celebrating the idea of transgenderism and that type of thing. Okay. I get it. It can be done, but the way that they're going about it right now, where they are crushing and totally ignoring the actual biological fact and biological women that are out there, to me, is where this whole thing is going for broke. It's really going on the wrong path, in my opinion. But anyway, all right. So Tucker Carlson, we're going to jump topics here. Tucker Carlson was given the 44,000 hours of video, much to a lot of people's chagrin in a lot of cases. And one of the things that a lot of people have been, kind of angry about is the fact that they didn't actually spread it across, all of the public outlet spectrum. And I can sort of understand. I mean, if you think about it, like Elon Musk, released the Twitter files to only a certain amount of reporters, and that kind of thing. So I can kind of see the strategy with this entire thing. But the fact of the matter is that, the January 6th footage, has now been released to not only Tucker Carlson, but has also been released to, the House, committees and that type of stuff. So there's a lot of this footage and everything that they're putting out there. Well, Tucker Carlson has had the 44,000, or I should say, has had access to the 44,000 hours of video footage. And no, I don't actually think that Tucker Carlson himself is going through all of this. I think what his team is actually going through all of the hours and hours of footage. But he basically said on his program that he is vowing to release the hidden footage, but from what he has seen so far, he's basically saying that they are lying. Now, this comes as no surprise to anyone who has been paying attention to this entire thing, knowing that that January 6th itself is not an insurrection. Okay. It never was. So on and so forth. But House Speaker Kevin McCarthy gave Carlson exclusive access to over 41,000. Okay. I said 44. It's 41, I guess. I don't know. 41, 44, who knows? But hours of the Capitol surveillance footage from the riot. I showed you a couple of episodes ago, some of the images and some of the footage that has come out from some of the body cams, where some of the police were saying that they were set up, that there were undercover police officers, law enforcement personnel in the crowd that were actually egging on some of the rioters to jump over barriers and those kinds of things, which might be considered a bit of entrapment. Okay. But that being said, the whole idea that we're not going to get anything out of this, I think, is a little bit of a farce. I think there's going to be a lot of truth that is going to be brought out with this. And Carlson on his show basically said that the defenders of democracy are defending democracy again. They're telling you that it's really, really dangerous. And he was talking in particular about the Democratic lawmakers and media personalities, all of their complaints. Carlson explained, coming from the piece here from the Political Insider, Carlson explained that the thousands of hours of surveillance footage from January 6th has been hidden from the public for 2 years, while a tiny group of people gets to make up stories about what happened that day and change the country on the basis of those stories. He cited a Rasmussen poll that indicates that 80% of likely voters think it's important the public see videos that had previously remained hidden. Now, the thing about this poll that he's talking about, it was across the board. It was at least 70% of all three categories, whether it was Republican, Democrat, or independent voters, at least 70% of all three categories, okay, said that we need to see this footage. And that's what he's kind of bringing out. Now, Carlson vowed that the release of the videos is coming, and it's coming rather soon. So he basically, here's a quote from it. We're going to bring you information on the tape, and some of it next week. And we think it's going to be really, really interesting. Again, one can only speculate, according to the piece, one can only speculate on what Tucker Carlson and his crew have found. But there's questions with regards to whether or not the feds provoked the riot, which I think is entirely possible. And the committee's report, the January 6th committee, focused exclusively on the aspect of the people who were attacking and not the failures of the police to protect everything. They were intentionally concealing security flaws in the final report. Security flaws in particular, I've kind of read the report, at least skimmed through it, but things in particular where the FBI and the Capitol Police were warned ahead of time and were aware of several things that they could have prevented this entire thing. And of course, I've maintained on this show multiple times that Nancy Pelosi, because she refused to bring in the National Guard, I actually think that if they had brought the National Guard in and had the National Guard there probably would not have been a riot. And in fact, I actually think that the reason why the National Guard wasn't brought in is because they did not want the additional manpower, because they wanted to have these people get overpowered, unfortunately, and to cause the issue. But apparently the same Rasmussen poll that I was talking about just a minute ago cited that 61% of respondents believed that it is likely that undercover government agents helped to provoke the Capitol riot. So 61% of people who were polled are saying that undercover agents helped to provoke the Capitol riot. In particular, there's still some question as to, and Buddy brought it up here. There is still some question as to Ray Epps and his interaction the night prior. There's video that I personally have seen that he essentially was instigating the crowd, saying that tomorrow we need to go to the Capitol and we actually need to take the building over. Okay. So he initially said that he was not part of the FBI. He was not part of one of the instigators, and et cetera, et cetera. But there is so much evidence that is kind of pointing to the point, that is actually pointing to the possibility, and let's just, dare I say it, the probability that this was a complete setup, that they manipulated people's raw emotions and got them to do things, and ultimately got Ashley Babbitt killed for doing it. And honestly, I can't even imagine. Again, we're dealing with the FBI. So the FBI, apparently, according to NBC News, the FBI previously reported on an informant who warned the FBI weeks in advance that January 6th posed a big threat of violence, but was ultimately ignored. Okay. So again, I just think that the point, there's multiple reports of FBI informants in the crowd, of MPD officers in the crowd that were undercover. There's a video that was running around, I think it's Free State Will on Twitter, was showing that internally inside the Capitol building, the Capitol Police were getting briefed on how to identify the undercover agents that were in the crowd, whether they had, and I brought this up on a past episode, whether they had a bracelet or they had like a special candy striped sticker on the barrel of the weapon that they were carrying. It's all of these kinds of questions, folks, that really call into the probability that this entire thing was set up, that they were working on the idea that they wanted to run raw emotions, and they decided that this was going to be the best way for them to capture or catch, entrap MAGA Republicans, people who were patriots who were looking for a resolution to the problem, to the issues that have been presented on multiple occasions throughout the states, especially the swing states, to things like voter fraud and voter integrity. And so, yeah, this is going to be interesting to watch. I'm sure Tucker Carlson and his team will come out with decent amounts of information with regards to this. And again, it's going to be something to watch in the near future. Okay. All right. So I have a couple of other things here. I'm just going to take a quick glance before I get to my question. One thing in particular, okay, Biden, of course, is dodging reporters on the COVID-19 origin. If you know that, if you understand that the FBI has admitted in public, as well as a couple of other reports that have come out that basically have shown that the Department of Energy report in particular, that basically have shown that the likelihood of a lab leak and the whole Wuhan lab leak theory, which I've advocated since the beginning, which a lot of people have advocated, but the lab leak theory is the most likely origin of COVID-19 and the release in China. Now, again, I've said multiple times, I don't know if it was intentionally released or accidentally released. To be honest with you, it doesn't really matter. The fact is it came from that lab. That's the only logical explanation, given the center to ground zero that the lab actually sits, the fact that they haven't found it naturally occurring on pangolin bats like they wanted us to believe came from a Chinese wet market, and the fact that the genetic material that was dissected has a CGG sequence within the DNA of the virus that essentially is not to be known naturally occurring anywhere, and that it was inserted into the DNA in a lab environment. All of that, I believe, lines up to one thing and one thing only, that the Wuhan lab was playing with it and it got out somehow, whether it was on purpose or not. So realistically, you know, the American government, we should be going after or at least sanctioning China for releasing that onto the world. And I think the world deserves money from China in regards to this. Now, that honestly would push China to a war-like scenario. So maybe that's the reason why they're not doing this or not going after them. But the fact of the matter is that that's where the damn thing showed up. Okay. I'm sorry. That's just where the damn thing presented itself. But in a reporter or a reporting situation where Biden was coming out of the White House and being, questioned by the reporters, a reporter named Iris Tao tweeted that President Biden was going to speak about the question that she asked, where she says, "Will you hold China accountable?" And he was going to speak, but as soon as he heard the entire question and actually registered it, he turned around and walked away. So the Biden administration is ducking on whether or not they're going to try and hold China accountable. I know they're not going to hold China accountable. China is bought by, or Biden is bought by China. Fairly certain on all of this. Again, that whole Hunter Biden laptop connection, money, Ukraine, all of that stuff is all part of it. All right. Another real quick thing in regards to some of the stuff that's happening today. There's an article in the Washington Examiner that it's an opinion piece, I'll admit, but it is very poignant over the idea that the Democrats keep pushing to tax the rich. And it's an analysis that this gentleman did. His name is James Rogan, and he did an analysis about this and basically has come up with the reality that as a matter of mathematical economics and basic economics, there's absolutely no way that by taxing the rich, we are going to be able to regain or get enough revenue to be able to pay down the deficit in any meaningful way. So there is absolutely no way that Biden's promise about not raising a penny on those making less than $400,000 a year, okay, without raising taxes to be able to pay off our deficit that we're particularly running. Now, I really think you should read this opinion piece. It does get into a little bit of math, and it talks about, how much money is involved here. But the fact of the matter is, Biden is lying. Biden has always been lying. He does nothing but lie. And so what he is doing here is he is essentially pandering to people without giving you the truth. And Biden's a serial liar. He just is. I mean, his entire career is built off of this. And so he is trying to get your votes, even though he knows as well as anybody else, assuming that he's actually even the one thinking about this. But the reality is that the economics of the situation is such that there's no way that we are going to be able to get us out of our deficit with just taxing the rich and the corporations. It is going to have to expand to, at a minimum, the middle class in order for this to actually occur. So again, and there's also been conversations about how we've had a much higher tax rate in the past, and that, the economy survived. That's a claim by the Democrats. That's also false. But the fact of the matter is that, once again, Democrats are interested in doing two things: taxing everyone and spending money that they do not have. And that's literally where they're at. Okay. So one last really quick thing. Apparently at CPAC, they always do a straw poll for who potentially is going to be the presidential nominee. And the fact of the matter is that when Donald Trump has been involved, Donald Trump has won that straw poll. And he did it again, this last CPAC. This article in the Epoch Times, let me go ahead and bring it up. This article in the Epoch Times shows that Donald Trump emerged as the clear winner in the highly anticipated straw poll conducted by the Conservative Political Action Conference, cementing his position as the preferred candidate of the Republican grassroots in his bid for the White House in 2024 with a commanding lead of 62%. Okay. So Trump easily surpassed Governor Ron DeSantis, who secured only 20% of the votes. And this outcome, again, the outcome is not unexpected. Okay. Just honestly, not unexpected here. Donald Trump is the clear leader. And this is part of the reason why I keep saying, as long as he doesn't screw things up by literally opening up his mouth and saying something incredibly stupid, I think that he can win again and will actually be president again for a second term in 2024. And that is the way that I think that things are going to start shaking out. And even though, Ron DeSantis, again, has not officially entered the race. Now, it appears that his book tour is potentially raising money and everything else for his election, for his presidential election. But I'll be honest with you, as far as I'm concerned, I think Ron DeSantis needs to stay where he is as the governor, finish out the 4 years, and then be prepared for jumping in 2028. Let Donald Trump have the position for 4 more years and give us an additional 8 years after that in the White House. So anyway, all right. It is time for questions for whiskey. All right. And tonight's question comes from Catherine Blair, or maybe not Blair, Bear, B-A-I-R. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. I apologize. Okay. So, hey, whiskey, what do you think Bill Gates and China are buying up almost the majority of farmland in the middle of America? I think she means, what do I think about Bill Gates and China buying it up? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and think others would also. Sounds nefarious. Just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get us. And then she says, shalom. Well, shalom to you too. And thank you. Okay. So here's the thing. Bill Gates has always been a philanthropist. All right. And to be completely honest, I am not 100% sold on the idea that Bill Gates buying up all this farmland is anything necessarily nefarious. Okay. Bill Gates has a lot of investments in agro-tech and the whole plant-based meat kind of thing. And he also has things about the climate change. He's been talking about climate change, which I'll be completely honest with you, why anybody even listens to this guy. I mean, he's not a climate scientist. He, I don't even think, if I recall correctly, I don't even think he finished college. To be honest with you, I'll have to look at that. I'm not even sure if he finished college, but the man did one thing, and one thing really, really well, which was essentially that he created and successfully marketed a software package that essentially caught on in the United States and became the #1 software being utilized on computers. That is his one claim to fame. Now, in the process of doing that, of course, he gained a extremely exorbitant a lot of money. But that being said, why anybody listens to him about things like virology and, climate change and any of this other stuff is well beyond me. The guy is smart. Okay. He was smart enough. He was able to do what he did. But to be completely honest with you, I just don't see where where buying up the farmland is necessarily a nefarious action. That being said, though, he does want to do certain things like get rid of people eating meat. He wants to do things with the climate. And again, he has also got a bunch of investments in agricultural markets. So I don't exactly think that in terms of himself, I don't exactly think that he is the one necessarily driving all of this, because he actually has a company. Give me a second. Let me find the company. Where is his company that he... So... okay, I don't remember. It's something about Cascades. And it's actually a dealing with something here in the Northwest that he created. He's an owner of, but it's actually the organization that's below him that is buying up the farmland. So, that being said, does it seem a little weird that he's buying up all this farmland? Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you take a look at this map that I got here, so this is an estimated amount of where and the money involved. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. where he's bought and how much acreage that he's actually bought in each one of these locations. And there was an article, or there was a rumor that he bought up a bunch of land in Arizona and was going to build a smart city down there. That so far has been unsubstantiated. So again, I do think he's doing some things, but I don't think it's necessarily more so nefarious other than he just is trying to expand his holdings and his money. That's it. Now, that being said, when you flip over to China, on the other hand, China is a bit of a problem. And the reason why is because of the fact that China is buying farmland near our military bases. I went through and did an article, if you recall, a few episodes back where it was talking, in particular, it was talking about the Chinese company Huawei and how the Huawei communications products and equipment can essentially interfere with our nuclear communications, our nuclear missile communications. Now they're going around and they're buying farmland in strategic locations. And outside of that, I mean, there's one good way to help control a country's economy, and that is by owning land, and in particular farmland, and the products, and owning the crops that are being produced. Plus, they also need, believe it or not, they actually need the resources. So for them, it is a nefarious kind of a situation. Okay. He himself is or they themselves are going around and doing things on the underhanded and the down low for a lot of things. I personally don't think that any foreign entities should be able to be allowed to own land in the United States. I already think that up until the point that Japan had their whole stock market crash and everything else, there was rumors that the Japanese actually owned a significant portion of the West Coast, in particular California. And I just personally think that America should not allow any foreign entity, I don't care whether it's China or anybody else, but any foreign entity to own land here in the United States. That being said, like I pointed out, I don't think Bill Gates is the nefarious one, but I definitely think China is always sneaky. Everything that they do has a purpose. They have essentially only one thing that they want to do, and that is literally to win, whether it's in business or war or anything else. Their whole purpose is to win at all costs. And right now, especially considering our tenuous situation with China, I think it's very, very suspicious that they're going around and purchasing farmland and other types of land in the United States. And so do I think Bill Gates is doing it nefariously? Maybe not. He might be. I mean, there very well could be a thing, because he is one of those globalist type of people who want to get rid of, who believes that the world is overpopulated, and that kind of thing. So he very well might have that intention writ large, but I don't exactly think that is necessarily the case in this particular case. I think he's just trying to expand his holdings and possibly expand his investments and those kinds of things. But China, definitely. And thank you for your question, by the way. If you would like to submit a question for Whiskey, which I do not have one for next week, but if you would like to submit a question for Whiskey, please do so by sending it to fans, that's FANS, or Foxtrot Alpha November Sierra, at whiskeymusings.online. That's fans at whiskeymusings.online. You can also use that same email address to submit your Pet of the Week for Wednesday night's Pet of the Week segment there as well. So you can do both do both, either the question of the week or the Pet of the Week submission, at both of those at the same address. All right, that is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Do me a favor. If you like the program and you have not done so already, please head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account, and subscribe. I am looking to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2023, and I am severely behind in my goal. So please do me a favor, head on over there and definitely sign up and subscribe or follow, I think is what they call it on Rumble, is following. Subscribe over there and follow me over there. You can also hit me up on any of the social media platforms that you've been seeing running around, as well as places like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as well, where I transmit to. Also, if you want to listen to the audio portion of the program, I am also on Spotify and Spotify, as well as I think it's Amazon and Google for podcasts. You can just look me up. I'm also on a couple obscure ones, but I can't remember those right off the top of my head. But I'm definitely on Spotify, so you can go and check that out. All right, we will see you on Wednesday nights. Whiskey Musings Broadcast. Good night, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time.